Most people believe wealth arrives in a single moment, a breakthrough, a lucky deal, a sudden windfall that changes everything overnight. And because they believe that, they spend their entire lives waiting for that moment to appear. They wait, and the years pass, and the moment never comes. I want you to consider something different, something I discovered after spending more than 20 years studying the wealthiest men and women of my generation. Not one of them, not Andrew Carnegie, not Henry Ford, not Thomas Edison, pointed to one dramatic event as the source of their fortune. Every one of them pointed to something far quieter, far less exciting, and far more powerful. They pointed to their daily decisions. Not the big dramatic choices that make the newspapers, the small, private, almost invisible decisions they made every single day, the ones nobody noticed, the ones nobody applauded, the ones that seemed too simple to matter. And yet those decisions, compounded over months and years, built everything they had. This is perhaps the most misunderstood truth about wealth. It is not constructed in grand gestures. It is constructed in daily choices so small that most people dismiss them entirely. And that dismissal is exactly why most people remain poor. I want to share with you 8 of those daily decisions. Not theories, not abstract ideas. 8 specific choices you can begin making tomorrow morning. Choices that will quietly, steadily, and inevitably reshape your financial life if you have the discipline to repeat them. But I must warn you, some of these decisions will seem almost too simple. You may be tempted to dismiss them the way most people do. And if you do, you will join the vast majority who spend their entire lives wondering why wealth never found them. The truth is that wealth was never meant to find you. You were meant to build it, one decision at a time. Let us begin with the first, and it starts before most people have even opened their eyes. The first daily decision is deceptively simple. It is the decision to begin each day with a clear and definite intention. I do not mean waking up and vaguely hoping the day goes well. I do not mean rolling out of bed and reacting to whatever the world throws at you. I mean deciding, before your feet touch the floor, exactly what you intend to accomplish and exactly who you intend to become that day. In all my years of research, I found that wealthy people share one habit that separates them from everyone else. They wake up with what I came to call a definite purpose, not just for their life, but for that specific day. Not enthusiasm, which comes and goes like the weather. Not motivation, which fades by noon. Purpose, a fixed, clear, unwavering sense of what this day is for. The average person wakes up and immediately surrenders control. They respond to demands. They allow the current of the day to carry them wherever it pleases. And by evening, they realize they have spent the entire day serving someone else's purpose instead of their own. I once studied a man who built a considerable fortune in manufacturing. When I asked him the secret of his success, he did not mention intelligence or connections or luck. He told me that every morning, before he did anything else, he sat in a quiet room and asked himself one question. What is the single most important thing I can do today to move closer to my goal? And he did that thing first, before the letters arrived, before the telephone rang, before anyone else's urgency could replace his own intention. Now compare that man with another I studied, a man of equal intelligence, perhaps even greater natural talent. But this second man had no morning intention. He woke each day and simply responded. He answered whatever was most urgent. He was tremendously busy. No one could accuse him of laziness. And yet after 15 years, he had almost nothing to show for his effort. His energy had been scattered across 1,000 different directions, and because it was never concentrated on a single definite purpose, it produced no lasting result. This is what I came to understand. Activity is not the same as progress. Busyness is not the same as building. A river that flows in a focused channel can carve through solid rock. That same water spread thin across a flat plain creates nothing but mud. Your daily intention is the channel. Without it, even extraordinary effort dissipates into nothing. Decide, before the world wakes up, what your day is for. Because if you do not decide, someone else will decide for you, and their decision will never make you wealthy. But choosing how you start the day is only the beginning. What you do with your mind after you rise, that is where the real battle takes place. And this next decision is one that most people have never even considered. The second daily decision is to stand guard at the entrance of your own mind. Let me explain what I mean. Every single day, from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, your mind is being fed. Thoughts enter it constantly, from conversations, from the people around you, from the general atmosphere of wherever you happen to be. And most people never question what enters. They accept every fear, every doubt, every discouraging opinion as though it belongs there, as though they have no choice in the matter. But you do have a choice, and making that choice deliberately every single day is one of the most powerful wealth-building decisions in existence. I observe this consistently. The men and women who build great fortunes are fiercely protective of their mental environment. They do not allow just anyone to deposit thoughts into their mind. They choose with great care what they think about, what they dwell on, and whose voices they allow to influence their beliefs. Think of it this way. If you owned a vault filled with gold, you would not leave the door open for anyone to walk in and help themselves. You would guard it. You would decide very carefully who was allowed access. And yet most people leave the door to their mind wide open every single day, allowing pessimists, critics, and fearful voices to walk in and steal their most valuable possession, their belief in what is possible. This is the principle I called autosuggestion. Your mind acts upon whatever instructions it receives most frequently. Feed it failure, and it will produce failure. Feed it expectation of achievement, and it will begin slowly at first, and then with gathering force, to find the people, the ideas, and the opportunities that make achievement possible. I once knew a man who had failed in business 3 times. By every outward measure, his situation was desperate. But he made a decision, a conscious, daily, unwavering decision, to refuse any thought that told him he was finished. Each morning he spoke to his own mind as though success were certain, not because he had evidence of it, but because he understood that the subconscious mind does not distinguish between instructions born of faith and instructions born of fear. It simply acts upon whichever it receives most often. Within 2 years, that man had built a business that surpassed anything he had previously attempted, not because his circumstances changed first, because his thinking changed first, and the circumstances followed. Guard the entrance to your mind the way you would guard a vault of gold. What is inside that mind is worth far more than gold. It is the source from which all gold flows. Now, guarding your thoughts is essential, but there is another decision, one you make during your working hours, that separates those who merely earn a living from those who build a fortune. And this is where most people unknowingly destroy their future. The third daily decision is to do more than what is expected of you, and to do it without being asked, without being noticed, and without expecting immediate reward. I called this principle going the extra mile, and in all my years of research, I never found a single exception to it. Every person who built lasting wealth had practiced it. Every person who remained poor had refused to. Most people believe they should be compensated first, and then perhaps they will consider giving more effort. They calculate the minimum required to keep their position, and they deliver precisely that amount, not a grain more. And they wonder why they remain exactly where they are, year after year. But every wealthy person I studied understood something that most people refuse to accept. The road to great compensation always passes through a season of uncompensated effort. Always. There are no exceptions to this law. Andrew Carnegie understood this before he understood anything else about wealth. As a young worker in a factory, earning almost nothing, he did not limit his effort to his wages. He arrived early. He stayed late. He learned every job in the building, not because anyone paid him to, but because he recognized that knowledge and reputation are forms of wealth that compound long before money does. Here is what happens when you make this decision daily. At first, nothing visible changes. You do more than expected, and no one seems to notice. This is the point where most people quit. They say, I gave extra effort and got nothing in return, and they retreat to the safety of doing the minimum. But those who continue discover something remarkable. Opportunities begin appearing that were never available before. Doors open that they did not know existed. People of influence begin seeking them out, not because of luck, but because a person who consistently delivers more than expected becomes impossible to ignore. Consider 2 men working side by side for the same wage. One does exactly what is asked, nothing more, nothing less. The other does what is asked and then looks for what else needs doing. He studies problems no one has solved. He learns skills no one required him to learn. After 1 year, both appear to be in the same position. After 5 years, they are living in entirely different worlds. The first man is still doing the same job, still earning the same wage, still wondering why life has not rewarded him. The second man has been promoted, recruited, or has started his own enterprise, because the habit of going the extra mile did not just increase his output, it increased his value. And the world always finds a way to compensate value, even when the compensation is delayed. I have shared 3 decisions so far: how you begin your day, how you govern your thoughts, and how you approach your work. But the 4th decision concerns something most people avoid discussing entirely, and it may be the most important of all. The 4th daily decision is to keep a portion of everything you earn before you spend a single cent on anything else. I know this sounds elementary, but I want you to understand something. Hearing a principle and practicing it daily are entirely different things. And the gap between knowing and doing is where most financial futures quietly die. It does not matter how much money you earn if you spend all of it. I studied men who earned enormous salaries and died with nothing. And I studied men of humble income who quietly accumulated fortunes that astonished everyone who knew them. The difference was never how much came in. It was how much stayed. The daily decision is this: before you pay anyone else, before the landlord, before the grocer, before any obligation, set aside a portion for yourself. Not what is left over after spending. What is removed before spending begins. Most people do this backward. They earn, they spend, and then they hope something remains. It never does. There is a law of human nature at work here. Expenses will always rise to consume whatever is available. If you earn more, you will spend more unless you have already removed a portion from reach. I studied a man who worked as a clerk for 30 years. His salary was modest by any standard. He never inherited money. He never received a windfall. And yet when he retired, he possessed more wealth than men who had earned 5 times his income. Every single week, without exception, he removed a fixed portion of his wages before he spent anything at all. He lived on what remained. In the early years, the amount seemed almost laughably small, but he was not saving for the early years. He was building for the decades ahead. And here is the deeper principle at work. When you consistently set money aside, you are not merely accumulating coins. You are training your own character. You are proving to yourself that you possess the self-discipline to delay gratification, to endure small discomforts now in exchange for great freedom later. And that discipline does not stay confined to your finances. The person who can resist the temptation to spend impulsively is the same person who can resist the temptation to quit when the work becomes difficult. These are the qualities upon which fortunes are built. The amount matters less than the habit. Whether it is 1/10 of your income or 1/20th, begin. The identity shift from someone who consumes to someone who accumulates is worth more than any amount of financial advice. But setting money aside is only half the equation. What you do with the people around you, that is the other half. And the 5th decision reveals something that even many hard-working people never learn. The 5th daily decision is to choose your associations with the same care you would choose a business partner. In all my research, I found no principle more consistently confirmed than this one. The people you spend time with shape your thinking. Your thinking shapes your decisions. Your decisions shape your financial destiny. There is no way around this chain. It operates whether you acknowledge it or not. I observed this pattern hundreds of times. A person with great potential would fall into the company of those who thought small, who complained constantly, who viewed wealth with suspicion and success with resentment. And slowly, so slowly that the person never noticed, their ambition would dim, their standards would lower, their expectations would shrink to match the expectations of those around them. The opposite was equally true. A person of ordinary ability who surrounded themselves with men and women of vision and discipline would begin to rise, not because of any dramatic change, but because the atmosphere of achievement is contagious. Standards are contagious. Belief is contagious. Andrew Carnegie told me directly that his fortune was built not by his own genius alone, but by his deliberate practice of surrounding himself with people whose strengths complemented his weaknesses. He called this the mastermind, a group of individuals working together in a spirit of harmony toward a common purpose. And he credited it as the single greatest factor in his success. You may not have a formal alliance like Carnegie's, but every day you make a choice about who you allow into your mental and emotional space. Here is a practical test. After spending time with someone, ask yourself one question: do I feel more capable or less capable than before? If the answer is consistently less, you have received important information. What you do with that information will shape your future. This does not mean abandoning old friends or treating anyone coldly. It means being honest with yourself about the influence of your environment. Choose your associations the way you would choose an investment, carefully, deliberately, and with a clear understanding of the returns they are likely to produce, because that is exactly what they are. Every person you spend time with is either adding to your future or subtracting from it. There is no neutral influence. Now, there is a sixth decision that most people actively avoid, and their avoidance of it is precisely what keeps them poor, even when they do everything else right. What I am about to share may be the most uncomfortable truth in this entire lesson. The sixth daily decision is to face at least one thing that frightens you. I do not mean recklessness. I do not mean foolish risk-taking. I mean something far more specific. I mean identifying the one action you know you should take, the conversation you have been avoiding, the proposal you have been afraid to present, the venture you have been too timid to begin, and doing it anyway. Doing it despite the fear. Here is what I discovered about fear and money. They are almost always found in the same room. Wherever there is an opportunity to build wealth, there is fear standing in front of it. And most people, when they encounter that fear, turn around and walk away. They tell themselves they are being cautious, but the truth is they are being controlled by an emotion that has no interest in their prosperity. The wealthiest people I studied were not fearless. That is a myth that does great harm. They were afraid constantly, afraid of failure, afraid of embarrassment, afraid of losing what they had built. But they had made a decision that fear would inform them, but never govern them. This is what I came to call applied faith, the practice of moving forward with confidence, even when the outcome is uncertain. I knew a man who spent 3 years preparing a business proposal. The plan was sound. The numbers were strong. Everything was in order except for one thing. He had never presented it to anyone. Every time he scheduled a meeting with a potential partner, he found a reason to postpone. He told himself the timing was not right. But the truth, which he eventually admitted to me, was simple. He was afraid of hearing no. When he finally presented his plan, not because the fear had vanished, but because he refused to let it govern him one more day, the meeting lasted less than an hour. The partner agreed. Within 5 years, the business had made him wealthy. 5 years of wealth built on a single moment of courage, and 3 years of poverty sustained by a single habit of avoidance. That is the arithmetic of fear. Each day, ask yourself, what am I avoiding because it frightens me? Then move toward it, not blindly, not without preparation, but deliberately, with faith in your own ability to handle whatever comes. You do not need to conquer every fear in a single day. You only need to face one. Tomorrow, face one more. This daily practice of courage will transform your life more than any amount of planning ever could, because on the other side of that fear, on the other side of that single bold action, is usually the very thing you have been waiting for. The seventh decision is one that most people have never been taught, and yet without it, all the effort in the world leads nowhere. Every decision I have shared so far depends on what I am about to tell you next. The seventh daily decision is to end each day by examining what you did, what you learned, and what you will do differently tomorrow. This may sound like a small thing. It is not. It is the difference between 20 years of experience and 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. Most people finish their day and immediately seek escape. They are tired. They are frustrated. They want to forget about the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And so they reach for distraction, anything that allows them to avoid the discomfort of honest self-examination. But the wealthy do something different. They pause, they review, They ask themselves uncomfortable questions. Did I use my time wisely today? Did I move closer to my definite purpose or further from it? Did I allow fear to stop me? What will I do tomorrow that I failed to do today? This practice, this daily accounting of your own conduct, is more valuable than any formal education. Formal education teaches you what others have learned. Self-examination teaches you what you need to learn, and no one else can do it for you. I observed this habit in nearly every successful person I studied. They kept what I came to think of as a personal ledger, not of money, but of behavior. They knew where their time went. They knew where their energy was wasted. They knew with painful clarity which habits were serving them and which were holding them back. And because they knew, they could change. You cannot change what you do not examine. You cannot improve what you refuse to measure. The person who ends each day with 5 minutes of honest reflection will outperform the person who works twice as hard but never pauses to consider whether their effort is pointed in the right direction. This is what I called accurate thinking, the habit of looking at yourself and your circumstances as they truly are, not as you wish they were. It is not comfortable, but comfort has never built a fortune. Begin this practice tonight. Before you sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? What one thing will I do differently tomorrow? Do not use this as an opportunity for self-punishment. Use it as a tool, a quiet, powerful tool that sharpens your judgment and accelerates your progress with every passing day. And now we come to the final decision, the 8th. I have saved it for last because in many ways it is the foundation upon which all the others stand. Without this decision, the other 7 will eventually collapse. With it, even the most ordinary person can build an extraordinary life. The 8th daily decision is the decision to persist when everything inside you wants to stop. This is where wealth is truly built. Not in the moments of excitement and inspiration. Those are easy. Anyone can take action when enthusiasm is high. The test of your character and ultimately of your financial future is what you do when enthusiasm disappears. I studied hundreds of men and women who had every quality necessary for success, intelligence, ambition, talent, connections, and yet they failed. They failed because they stopped. They stopped one step too soon. They stopped because the results did not come fast enough, or because someone criticized them, or because a setback convinced them their goal was impossible. And in nearly every case, the success they were seeking was just beyond the point where they quit, just beyond it, close enough to touch, if only they had kept moving. I recall a man who pursued a business venture for nearly 2 years. He invested his savings, his time, and his reputation. For months, he saw no return. His friends told him to quit. His family urged him to find steady employment. And one evening, exhausted and discouraged, he decided they were right. He closed the business and walked away. Less than 6 months later, another man took over where he had left off, made a few small adjustments, and built it into one of the most profitable enterprises in the region. The first man had done 90% of the work. He had cleared the path, laid the foundation, and endured the most difficult season. But he stopped before the harvest came, and someone else reaped what he had sown. That story haunted me for years, because it was not an exception. It was the pattern. Again and again, I watched people surrender their dreams at the very moment those dreams were about to become reality. Not because they lacked talent, not because the opportunity was false, but because they lacked the one quality that cannot be replaced by any other, the willingness to continue when continuing feels impossible. I want you to understand something about wealth that no one tells you. The building of a fortune is not exciting. For long stretches, it is tedious, discouraging, and invisible. You make the right decisions day after day, and nothing seems to change. You save when you would rather spend. You work when you would rather rest. You face your fears when you would rather hide. And for weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, it appears that none of it matters. This is the season that destroys most people, not the season of hardship. Hardship has a certain drama to it that keeps people moving. It is the season of invisibility, the season where you are doing everything right and receiving nothing in return. Where the scoreboard has not moved, the bank account has barely grown, and the people around you are beginning to question whether you have lost your mind. I have seen more fortunes abandoned in this quiet season than in any dramatic failure, because at least failure gives you a clear signal. The quiet season gives you nothing, nothing except the opportunity to prove day after day that your commitment is real. But it does matter. Every single decision is being recorded, not on paper, but in the fabric of your character and in the quiet accumulation of your resources. And there comes a tipping point where all of those invisible deposits suddenly become visible, where the compound effect of 1,000 small decisions produces a result that looks to everyone else like overnight success. But you will know the truth. You will know it was not overnight. It was every morning you woke with purpose. Every afternoon you delivered more than was required. Every evening you examined your conduct honestly. Every fearful moment you moved forward anyway. Every dollar you set aside when spending would have been easier. Every association you chose with care. Every destructive thought you refused to entertain. That is how wealth is built. Not in a single decision, but in the daily repetition of 8 quiet ones. And here is what I want to leave you with today. You do not need to be brilliant to build wealth. You do not need to be born into the right family or possess some rare gift that others lack. You need only this: the willingness to make these 8 decisions every single day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what the world is doing around you, regardless of whether anyone notices or applauds. The people who build lasting fortunes are not the most talented. They are the most consistent. They are the ones who decided, quietly, without fanfare, that they would show up every day and make the choices that most people are unwilling to make. You have that same choice in front of you right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. And the beautiful thing about daily decisions is that they do not require you to change your entire life at once. They only require you to change today, just today. Tomorrow you make the same choice again, and the day after that, again. But let me tell you what these choices will do. They will slowly, quietly, and irreversibly change the kind of person you are. And when the kind of person you are changes, everything in your life changes with it. The opportunities you attract, the people who seek you out, the confidence with which you move through the world. I have watched this transformation happen more times than I can count. Ordinary men and women, people with no special advantages, no extraordinary gifts, no privileged beginnings, building lives of remarkable prosperity simply because they chose day after day to make the decisions that others were unwilling to make. And the most beautiful part is this: the wealth they built was only the beginning. The discipline required to make these 8 decisions does not just produce money. It produces character. It produces peace of mind. It produces the kind of deep, unshakable self-respect that no amount of money can purchase and no amount of failure can destroy. That is the real fortune, not the numbers in an account, not the possessions. The person you become in the process of building it. That person, disciplined, purposeful, courageous, persistent, is the true wealth. Everything else is simply its reflection. I have spent a lifetime studying what separates the rich from the poor, the successful from the unsuccessful, the fulfilled from the frustrated. And after all those years, after all those interviews, after all that research, I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The difference is not talent. It is not luck. It is not circumstances. It is decision, daily, repeated, unglamorous decision. The 8 decisions I have shared with you today are not secrets. They are not hidden. They are available to anyone willing to practice them. And yet most people will hear them, nod in agreement, and never act. They will wait for something bigger, something louder, something that feels more like the dramatic breakthrough they have been imagining. But the breakthrough never comes that way. It comes quietly. It comes daily. It comes through the accumulated weight of small, faithful choices that no one sees and no one celebrates until the day the results become impossible to ignore. And that power, the power to decide, belongs to you right now. If this lesson helped you, subscribe to Napoleon Mindset for more timeless principles of success and wealth.